right, welcome back everybody to the Always Bayern Chelsea show. Today, as we record this one, is Sunday, January 26th. A couple of matches to talk about this weekend. Bayern Munich had a very important but very shaky win against Freiburg, and Chelsea had a poor loss against Man City. This once again is a YouTube video episode, so go ahead, check out the YouTube channel. Closing in on 100 subscribers. We'll have to figure out something to do for that epic milestone. But yeah, subscribe to the YouTube channel and let's hit it.
Would be nice, yeah. I'll put the brain to work on that one for the 100 subscribers. But yeah, dog days of the season here where winners become really winners. Good teams find ways to grind out wins, which we saw early Saturday morning. One team clearly knows how to do that, and one team doesn't. So yeah, we'll talk about that.
Yeah, let's start with Bayern Munich, I suppose, since they were the first of the two matches to play on Saturday morning. Yeah, traveling to Freiburg, which can be a tough match. Freiburg is no slouch of a team. They're no powerhouse by any means, but they're I think before this match they were around eighth in the table, and they usually kind of sit in that really fifth through 10th range. So they're always pretty decent. And we talked about this before, but that range of the Bundesliga right now, maybe fourth through 11th, is only separated by a few points. So, yeah, I mean they're a solid team. But Bayern Munich, had a few injuries and things to deal with in terms of the starting lineup. So here's what Vincent Kompany threw together. Maybe a surprise or two in there for me, but we saw Manuel Neuer in between the sticks. Joshua Kimmich playing at right back, the position that he hates, but he's decent at. We'll talk about it, but he kind of drifted more towards the midfield anyways throughout this match, and injuries in it changed things. But Eric Dier and Kim Minjae were the center back duo, and Upamecano's now injured. Not exactly sure what's going on with him. Kim is carrying that Achilles tendonitis, I believe, so it's not looking good for the center backs. Rafa Guerrero at the left back. Pavlovic and Goretzka in the midfield, Leroy Sané at right wing, Jamal Musiala at the 10, and Serge Gnabry to start at the left wing, and Harry Kane at the 9. So, yeah, what did you think of that lineup? I know you said you were surprised not to see Olise in there.
Yeah, if I'm Vincent Company, unless Elise is tired or something, or you're trying to rest him, I would just start him at right wing every match. I'm trying to build consistency if I'm this Bayern team, especially heading toward an important match against Leverkusen, heading toward the knockout stages of the Champions League, just heading toward important matches that you need to win. And to me, consistency is really key, especially at this point of the year. The way he's been moving those wings around, I just think it's tough for any of those guys to find any really great form. And Elise has been your most consistent out of all of them. So that's kind of my reasoning there for being surprised at that. And then in terms of Kimmich, I'm fine with putting him at right back because if you want to get your best players on the pitch, your guys that are in form right now, to me, that includes Goretzka and Kimmich certainly. And then if you have injuries on that back line and want to play Pavlovic instead of some other guys that wouldn't be as good, yeah, throw Kimmich in there. If he doesn't like it, I don't know. He's great at right back and in midfield. So to me, that makes your best team when you have your best guys out there.
Yeah, I agree. And I thought Kimmich once again in this match was solid. A little bit rusty maybe at the right back spot. He did, as I mentioned, drift more centrally and kind of played as a midfielder throughout the match. And he plays right back for the German national team, so he's obviously not a slouch at it, played it at different points in his career. But once he got going, I thought he was fine, and I thought he was um, one of the more important players of the match, as he usually is for Bayern Munich. Um, but yeah, that back line is hurting right now a little bit in terms of injuries. I mentioned Upamecano and Kim with the Achilles tendonitis. Kim just continues to play through it, and it sounds like he wants to keep playing through it. So, but my point is, at least with the center backs, we're kind of at this position. Really, it was something that could have been avoided, I think. I've been talking about this for a while. I needed to see more of Eric Dier in the first half of the season. Company did what Tuchel did last year and just ran Kim and Upamecano for 90 minutes every match. And as we saw last year in the second half of the season, they start to make mental mistakes and then they start to pick up knocks. And yeah, unfortunately, that's just where we're at right now. I thought Dyer had another very, very solid match. I thought he was the best defender on the day. And I mean, now we have Alphonso Davies injured at the left back position. Guerrero hasn't looked good at left back this season so far. He is good at contributing to the offense when he has free range to kind of drift around and play more centrally and more up front. But he, of course, doesn't have the speed or defensive acumen of Davies to get back and play defense. And we see that burn us against good teams. I mean, he had that penalty against Feyenoord, and you can get through in a lot of these Bundesliga matches with a Guerrero back there, but these top tier Champions League matches, you just won't be able to. So it's good that we're getting some guys back. Stanisic is now healthy. We'll talk about it. Leon Goretzka got hurt, so Stanisic actually had to come in and play right back. Kimmich had to move up to the midfield. Stanisic looked good. Didn't think that he was gonna play that much. I think he was just trying to ease back from injury. And then yeah, you still have Sasha Bue who's not quite healthy, and you still have Hiroki Ito who knows if he'll really even be anything this season in terms of his health.
Yeah, that backline will certainly be something to watch going forward here. I saw something about Ito recently that he's back to training or
He's running.
um
I think he
oh, is that
maybe
what it
had a
was?
I think he maybe had a session or two with the ball.
Okay. I mean, that's slightly encouraging, I guess. But again, at this point in the season, you don't necessarily know what you're going to get with him. So to me, that's where it really becomes important to see which guys can be consistent moving forward into these tough matches, even if it's a so-called less talented player. But if they're in form and more consistent, that's to me, once again, the important thing.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I also agree with what you said about Olise. I'm starting Olise at right wing. The winger situation right now is becoming more and more worrisome each game, in terms of how these wingers can perform against top talent. We've seen so many matches this season where they've just lacked creativity, really aren't contributing to the attack. Um, Serge Gnabry had another poor game, another game where he was really, really ineffective. Zane didn't do much this game either. I thought Zane looked a little bit better than Gnabry and Coman, but Coman had one of those games again where he comes in and just he can burn a defender, he can dribble past someone left and right, but after that, nothing's gonna happen. He's gonna sky a cross or just miss a shot, and it's unfortunate because I really like Gnabry and Coman as like leaders in the locker room and as people, I think. And I also like certain aspects of their game and what they can contribute, but it just looks like their time at Bayern Munich has run its course. And it's really sad to say that because they've been important players in the history, I guess, of Bayern Munich, but you need a refresh at that position. Honestly, if it comes to it, there are times where I wouldn't even mind pulling Musiala out to a left wing spot and maybe playing like a Muller at the 10. I mean, he is not somebody who I'd play 90 minutes every game, but Muller, when he came in for this one, I mean, he looked better and more creative than some of these wingers just for the 7 minutes or whatever that he was in. So there's some serious questions I think at this point to be asked about that winger position, but really maybe the biggest question is where is Tell? Because I'm putting Tell in over Coman at this point. I'm putting Tell in over Gnabry. So it's just disappointing that we haven't seen him at all in the last 3 games, I want to say.
It's weird. It's for sure weird. Fabrizio's tweeting about it every time that he has 0 minutes. Man, just give him to me, honestly, because I'll take him and I'll give him minutes at Chelsea. It's super weird to me. Yeah, I don't know. Company will certainly have to answer that. I'm surprised. I don't know if they ask him about it in press conferences, but I'd love to hear what he has to say for his reasoning.
Yeah, I mean, every time he talks about him, he insists that he's still in the team's plans and that they communicate regularly and the generic answers, I guess you'd expect him to say. I get the only thing I can think of, I don't really know how good Tell is defensively. Like Coman and Gnabry and Zane are so good at tracking back and like allowing that Guerrero or Davies or whoever's playing left back to kind of have free reign at times and like float inwards and float up because you know Coman and Gnabry and even Zane when he's at the left wing are going to be there for that cover to track back, and especially when you play such a high line that's really needed. um and obviously Tell works better in those half spaces that kind of Musiala Davies operate in and not so much out wide like Bayern wingers play, but th those aren't reasons to not use him, in my opinion, especially when Coman and Gnabry are playing the way that they are right now.
Yeah, and that's interesting. Maybe company even sees him more as a striker too. And obviously they got a guy that showed his strength at that position in Harry Kane. So it could be just tough for Tell to get those minutes behind better players.
Yeah, so I guess speaking of Kane, 15th minute of this match, Harry Kane opened things up with such an important goal for so many reasons. One, it was, I think I read this. It doesn't seem like this could be true, but maybe look it up if you don't believe me, I guess. I read that this was the first English to English connection ever in the Bundesliga with Eric Dier. I don't know why the hell Dier was in this position in the first place, but Dier and Kane actually said that too in his post-game interview. He laughed and was like, "Why was Eric all the way up there?" But Dier was so far up and was under pressure and played a beautiful pass under pressure to Kane. And Kane really hurry Harry Kaned it. You know, I got my Kane jersey on for this moment, but spun around the defender in a movement that, again, Kane to me, I've said this before, the most athletic, unathletic guy I think I've ever seen because he does this athletic move that I don't know how he had it in him, but he spun around the defender and um, just blasted a banger of a shot. I mean, yeah, 121 kilometers per hour. They clocked it at 76 miles per hour. So, um, really an important goal for the team because, again, you don't want to get into the slump of the attack isn't producing early on um, against a team that's going to sit back and wait to counter. So Kane breaks things open right away. Also, an important goal for Kane because all the chatter over the last while was this misleading headline of Kane hasn't scored in an open goal in 2 months. Okay. Bayern had a break for about a month. He was injured for a ton of games in that period. So he played like 3 games where he had 2 penalties and an assist or two. And the media is like freaking out. So he kind of put those talks to rest as well as made it a super important goal for this match.
Yeah, just a rocket of a goal. Harry Kane taking matters into his own hands. Kind of had been pretty boring up to that point in the match. No insane chances for either side. Looked like Bayern were fairly comfortable, but the way their positioning was, I wasn't loving a ton of what they were doing. And then, yeah, Kane just says, all right, I'll score. And that's why you got a player like him because even when you're struggling to find space and find chances, Kane can kind of do it on his own.
Yeah, totally. And, I think a lot of people have said the team's too dependent on Jamal Musiala. I think, if anything, the team's too dependent on Kane because when Kane's not scoring, they really do struggle. And, I think you have a higher standard for Harry Kane than you do Musiala. But at this point, Musiala hasn't scored in over a month at all. Obviously, same thing with Kane. He's been sick for a while and he's kind of just coming back. But this game was a game where I think I needed to see more out of Musiala. Obviously, same with Feyenoord. I needed to see more out of everybody against Feyenoord, Kane included. Kane, didn't do anything in that match. So I don't know. I think with Musiala, it's like if he's going to become a player who's paid as much as Kane in that echelon that he wants, and if he wants to be the first player on Bayern with a release clause, which you could argue he deserves. I mean, that's a point of contention maybe, but you could argue it. He's gonna have to have higher standards as well. So I don't know if that's a little off the topic diatribe, but just something that I've kind of been spinning around, kicking around in my head a little bit.
Yeah, every team's we've talked about gonna have players they rely on more than others. It's just the reality of how a team works. It's almost impossible to have a team where every player is the exact same level. Um, and even then, you'd still have guys that probably score more than others or provide more than others. So, um, yeah, they rely on Kane and Musiala, I think, a lot because they're great players.
Yeah, and I mean that's just how it is. You know, you mentioned Bayern's positioning in this match. That is something I wanted to talk about as well because, yeah, rest of the first half, you mentioned it. Bayern seemed relatively comfortable. I thought they had a very solid first half. I thought they looked, pretty good. Only got that one goal. Um, and Goretzka ended up getting hurt in the 40th minute or so, and like I said, got taken out. Um, and we saw Stanisic come in earlier than he expected. I want to reiterate, I think Stanisic did a nice job, especially for coming back and having to play more than you're expecting to. First match back from a lengthy injury. Um, he didn't knock my socks off, but he looked solid. Stanisic moves to right back, Kimmich moves to midfield. Goretzka, his injury doesn't sound like it's that bad. Um, he'll be out for this Champions League match. Maybe he'll be out for Kiel over the weekend, but I don't think it's going to be too much longer than that. Although, update on the Davies injury, the initial reports were wrong. Davies actually tore a muscle in his hamstring. It wasn't just a strain like they reported. So Davies is going to be out for longer now. It's sounding like 4 to 6 weeks. We'll see about that. That's a big blow for Bayern. Um, but yeah, Bayern's positioning in this match was different, and I think that Kompany probably just didn't trust this back line as much with all the injuries. Um, that could be one explanation for it, but the high line was not really existent. Bayern was way deeper, and especially in the second half, we'll get into this. They kind of played like how they played under Tuchel. Just a lot of kind of swinging the ball back and forth, and they weren't very aggressive. So tactically, this one was a little bit different than what we've seen.
Yeah, and that's not the worst thing at times. It's good to find other ways to win. So for them to still get a win playing in a slightly different manner, I'm not against that per se. When you realize that maybe you're going to struggle a little bit in that back line, yeah, bring the high line back for sure. You don't want to overextend yourself. I've seen teams do that much too often where a manager's too stubborn, leaves that high line out there too long, and they get burned time after time. So for me, that's kind of a sign that maybe Kompany's maturing and his team is understanding that they can win in other ways, which to me is only going to be good going forward when you're going to play tougher teams.
Yeah, and I do. I mean, I get it. Also, if you watch the Feyenoord match, you saw the mistakes from Guerrero. You saw multiple mistakes leading to goals by Kim. And so you don't want to throw those two back out there again. Obviously, you're pairing Kim with Dier instead of Upa, someone who doesn't have the foot speed, like Upamecano does. Um, and Kimmich, who hasn't played right back really this year for Bayern outside of playing with the German national team. So I get it. You're going to be more hesitant to do things like that. But yeah, like I said, I was happy with how Bayern played in the first half. Second half, different story. 54th minute, Bayern got that second goal, extremely crucial goal, off of a corner. One of the better Kimmich corners that I've seen all year. He's been trying to bend the ball in like this really all year, and quite frankly, he just misses a lot. He misses the mark, but this time it was right on the money and bent a ball in. Kim got the goal. I watched the replay so many times, and it was tough for me to see if the ball actually went off Kim or if it went off the keeper. But nonetheless, Bayern got that goal. Kim is credited with it, and Kimmich with the assist.
Yeah, great assist. Goalkeeper, I think needs to do better probably, but good job by Kim being in the right spot and getting that goal and makes him my Batman man of the match in the day because it ends up being the winning goal for Bayern. And I think it's just super important. And Kim is a warrior for battling through injury and still being able to go out there and leap high and get a goal.
Yeah, I agree with that, and especially to rebound after the match he had against Feyenoord too. I think that that does show something about his character that's worth mentioning. So, 62nd minute, we saw Company head to the bench for some subs. Sane and Gnabry came off. Olise and Coman came on. Um, Michael Olise, I love him. I said this before. He's the best winger on the team, but he just this year has not operated well as a sub. For whatever reason, I don't know if he needs to get in rhythm a little bit or what, but yeah, he just hasn't looked great as a sub this season so far. And again, this match, none of these four wingers did anything. So again, it's why I'm frustrated that Tell's not being used at all. Um, but in the 68th minute, we saw Freiburg score off of a corner of their own, and honestly, this goal was coming. Bayern in the second half really let Freiburg control the match, especially towards the end of the match. You know, maybe beginning of the second half, Bayern still was in control more or less, but end of the second half, I mean, man, these last 30 minutes or so, Bayern just let Freiburg have the ball, absorb pressure, and you could kind of see chinks in Bayern's armor. And it was weird because I've never seen them play like this. You know, maybe it was some of the reasons we discussed, but um, yeah, I mean, this goal was coming, and I actually thought, based off how Bayern and Freiburg played this match, that a draw probably would have been a fair result.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I saw less of the second half, but it seems to be, this time of year, injuries, Bayern are just at times kind of on the back heel, if you will, in the way that they play. Again, I think a lot of that is just with the turnover and these injuries they've had, they're struggling to get their best guys out there. And then, you have some of these matches probably where you're on the road and a team is a solid team. As we said, Freiburg is no slouch of an opponent. So they're fighting hard to get that win. And when Bayern are just a little bit on the edge like that, on the back heel, then that other team might take a little more control. And to me, that's probably what happened if I were to guess. So then really it makes it all the more important that Bayern was able to withstand that pressure and get the win. And you can look back and say, okay, yeah, we probably weren't right in the way that we approached that second half, but we still got the win.
Yeah, I agree with you, and that's why really I'll keep harkening back to this sentence, but an important win for Bayern, such an important win, a shaky win, but a super important win. We'll get into that more in a second here, but I also just wanted to mention a few more subs because 82nd minute Guerrero Musiala come off and Muller and Palhinha come on. João Palhinha's first match, I want to say, back from injury. You know what? Actually, I think he played a few minutes in the Feyenoord match, but um, Polina's getting worked back in, so that's a really big thing to see just because he's a guy that you're gonna need in certain matches. I think his profile is beneficial to Bayern. Yeah, like I said, in certain matches, especially as a sub in moments like this. So, um, just good to see him getting healthy. He hasn't had the start to his Bayern Munich career that he would have wanted for sure. Couldn't really break into that starting lineup and then got injured. So we're gonna hope that he stays healthy and just kind of gets back into a rhythm here. Um, but yeah, you talked about how Kim was your man of the match. Kim was my Robin of the match. Um, and for this reason, my man of the match was Harry Kane. Not even because he scored that opening goal, but it was because of, and this is going to make some people so mad probably, but it was because of the defense that he played in the end of the match. I can't tell you how many times Harry Kane was back with the back line almost, not even just fielding passes, which we saw a lot of Kane and Musiala do throughout the match with the high line being so far back. Um, Kane was just back playing defense. Like he was just busting his butt and he was just going to will this team to victory in whatever way he could in this game. So I was like shocked at the positions I saw Kane in this match defending.
Yeah, it's huge for a leader to step up like that. Kane is a leader, a captain, might not be captain of this particular Bayern squad, but let's be honest, he probably is pretty much a captain for them. And awesome to see a guy do that in his position. You know, he would certainly get a pass if he doesn't put as much effort in defensively off the ball, but he does, and I think that shows everybody else that they need to as well. So that's always huge, and credit to him for that.
Yeah, I agree. The only other match awards or guys to shout out I had written down here, I had Dyer as the defender. I thought Dyer was just rock solid all day long. He provided that assist, and he once again showed me, well, he showed me something that I already knew, but I hope he showed Kompany that he can be counted on to play minutes in some of these matches. I would love to see him paired with Upamecano because I actually think Dyer's profile and Upamecano's profile fit a little bit better together. So I'd like to see that a little bit more to give Kim rest as well for his Achilles tendonitis. I'm pretty sure that's what it is. It's an Achilles issue. I believe I've heard it as tendonitis. So Kim needs to get some rest at some point, or else we're going to keep seeing more of these mistakes, I think. Um, and then my underrated player was Kimmich. Mentioned it earlier, but again, just a solid match from Kimmich. I think part of the reason why he was so solid was because Stanisic came in and was solid, and then that allowed um, Kimmich to kind of drift up more and just play more of an attacking, aggressive role like he normally does in the midfield. Being able to count on Stanisic's defense back there, I think, was a super important thing.
Yeah, I would shout out Kimmich just for his willingness to do whatever it takes to get a victory for the club and always wear that badge with pride. We'll see what happens with his future here. If anything happens soon, but he's just a guy that you can rely on to play any position. I think if you threw him in at striker, he'd make great runs, and he's short, would still give it his all to be the best player he can be.
Yeah, I mean, he again is somebody who I actually would love to see rested as well, because this guy plays 90 minutes every match, and I'm sure, based off the type of guy that I know Kimmich is, I'm sure he's in every single coach's ear saying, "You better not bench me." You know, I'm playing every minute of this match, and I think eventually some coach needs to have a little bit of courage and give the man a rest because I don't want to see him get worn out either. Um, but yeah, Bayern now has their final group stage Champions League or stage, whatever it's called, Champions League match this Wednesday against Slovan Bratislava, I think is how it's pronounced. But a team that they should crush, a team that they need to crush, I think, not just in terms of the table, but in terms of confidence. I need to see a big win here. I think we're going to see a big win here. The team isn't going to be healthy, but I don't think that should matter. So an important match coming up. And then I believe after that it's Kiel in the Bundesliga over the next weekend. So another important match to have, and most importantly, I just want to say Leverkusen drew Leipzig this weekend, so Bayern is now up to a 6 point lead, which is massive because we've seen the chinks in their armor and we've seen that they are beatable. So getting a little bit more of a cushion in the Bundesliga is so massive.
Yeah, I think that is massive. Agreed. That 6 point cushion could be the difference. A lot of time to go, a lot of matches to be played, but I think we might be looking back at that and saying that that was a difference maker. In terms of the UCL, just kind of looking at the standings here, technically possible for Bayern to get into that top eight, but they'll just need some help pretty much from teams to either draw or lose. Atalanta and Leverkusen, who are sitting at 14 and 13 in the 7 and 8 spots, they probably need to draw and lose for sure,
Yeah,
as well
Atalanta
as
plays somebody good. I want to say Barcelona, but I'm not 100%. I just know that they play somebody solid.
yeah, they play Barcelona. Leverkusen plays a team that they'll crush.
Yeah, is it
You
like
got Milan at
Prada or
15 who
something?
play Dinamo. Yeah, it is Sparta.
Yeah.
Yeah, so looks like yeah, Milan. Atletico plays RB Salzburg away, so that could potentially happen. But then you'd also need like even Monaco and Feyenoord and Lille and Brest to all draw or lose essentially too. So asking a lot, but it could happen. Either way, I'm not too concerned because Bayern, if they get this win, would certainly be in the top half of the bottom half, meaning that they'd get, I assume that means you'd get like a home match, right? In
It
that kind of pre-knockout.
it does. I don't exactly know how the draw works though, because the table is so messed up this year.
And looking at that, like you said, Bayern fans might be complaining about how they're doing, but as you mentioned, Real Madrid are down there, PSG, City. So it's not like they're the only big team that haven't done incredible.
Yeah, it's weird with the new format this year. It certainly provides a level of excitement, I think, for maybe a neutral um, that wasn't there before. A few too many matches for my liking with the injuries that Bayern has, but um, yeah, it's going to be cool, I think, to see what happens. And I've maintained from the beginning of the year, really, I don't think this is Bayern Munich's year in Europe. But I think these are all very good learning matches for Vincent Kompany. And if Bayern fans and Bayern, leadership can understand that or really come to grips with the fact that, if you want to keep Vincent Kompany around for long term, you're going to need some moments of learning and you know, I also think you're going to need some new players at some point here, but it's interesting and it's going to be fun to watch nonetheless.
Definitely agree. Crazy things can happen.
With that, let's jump over to Chelsea. You want to kick us off?
Yeah, Chelsea had a kind of mid-morning, lunchtime-ish match against Manchester City away in Manchester at the Etihad Stadium, and this one went about as poor as it could go for Chelsea, and there's not a lot I want to say about this match in particular, except talking about the things I'm worried about for Chelsea going forward and that they displayed in this match, because we've seen now over the last 7 Premier League matches that Chelsea appear to be a team battling for relegation as opposed to battling for the top 4 spots.
Yeah, I mean, ended up being a 3-1 loss there, and I mean, we talked about this over text yesterday, but I'm really disappointed with how Chelsea played in that second half. There's blame to be put everywhere, there's blame to be put on players for sure, almost every player, maybe barring a few. But there's, in my opinion, certainly blame to be put on Enzo Maresca as well, just for the lackluster effort, really. And we talk about pushing the right buttons. The last, I don't know how many matches he hasn't been pushing the right buttons. Um, Starting lineup I thought was fine. I uh, I get using Sancho against City, although I guess now that they don't have Kyle Walker, maybe you do want someone with like a speed demon like Neto. City's going through a bunch of changes as well. Obviously, the new center back, he had some mistakes in the beginning, leading to Chelsea's early goal. Um, but after that, Chelsea looked like they were just playing for the draw. And against City, that's never going to work. I don't care how, up and down City's form has been this year. Um, but, it's weak in my opinion. It sends a weak message to the team. The way that Enzo sent out, the squad in the second half and, something's got to change.
Yeah, I mean to briefly touch on the beginning of the match. It's the same story we've seen over those last seven matches. You start off pressing really, really well, and the boys are fired up. Clearly, it's an away match, and you put under pressure this new young center back who looks like he wants to get as far from the stadium as possible because he makes two massive early mistakes. Almost got a red. I mean, that yellow was pretty intense, that tackle he had. Tries to head it to the keeper. Chelsea get an early goal, should add a second goal, maybe even a third. And that's the same story. You get that early goal, don't get a second or third because you're missing chances. And then you say, all right, we did enough. Let's stop playing. And I'm going to use this to talk about just the mentality of the team in general because here's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing a shit mentality. It's terrible. The way that they play, you're scared of a team that, sure, has dominated the last 10 years, but hasn't been up to form this year at all, has shown that they're very vulnerable, yet you're going to respect them. To me, that's terrible to begin with. Secondly, you're the youngest team in the Premier League. Why aren't you playing like it? Young guys should be having more fun, should be playing reckless at times. I'm okay if you make mistakes because you're a reckless young team. I'm completely fine with that as long as if you do it too often, you correct it. But they're not showing that at all. That's how they played in the beginning of the year. They were scoring goals for fun against teams. It was awesome, exciting, exhilarating. Now it's like they're playing as if they're scared and old and conservative, and it's really weird to me. That goes back to the players not having elite mentality. Certainly goes back to the manager and Enzo Maresca not showing his players how to have that mentality. And I don't know how to necessarily correct that. Is it a culture issue, a manager issue, player by player? I don't know for sure, but to me, you know, and all I can think about as a Packer fan, they're exactly like the Green Bay Packers the last couple of years. It's actually insane to me how comparable both the youngest teams in the league, no discipline, a lot of penalties, yellow cards, all the talent in the world, a manager that's kind of young, doesn't seem like he has authority. It's so similar. And it seems like these teams should be playing with more fun and energy, and they're not. It's just so weird to me.
Yeah, I agree, and I'm getting sick of some things from Enzo Maresca, and I would love for him to prove me wrong. I don't want to just straight up sound like a hater. I would love it, love it, love it if he proved me wrong and Chelsea turns around and starts to play like they were at the beginning of his tenure. But I'm sick of how he talks to the media. I never liked it. I get it when you're in second place and you say we're not a top team, we're not in a title race. I get the gimmick of that. I get the tactic that you're trying to use there, not putting pressure on
Right, when it was a
yourselves.
joke, when it was a joke, but
Exactly.
it turns out it was just like serious.
It seems like he's manifesting it with how he continuously says that type of thing to the media. I don't know if it's like to give himself a pass for these performances or what it's about now, but I just think if I was a player, I would really hate that. At this point, I don't know, what I would do, but it can't be helping this mentality or culture that you're talking about, coupled with how he kind of laid down against City after scoring that first goal and said, okay, now, and again, this is partially on the players. I'm not putting all the blame on Enzo here, but um, it's not it's not how I want to see a team coached. And I get that it's more in the Premier League, especially teams kind of, play these tactics a little bit more and need to just grind out the points and whatnot because every team is so good. But it's not how I like to watch the game. It's not how I would like to play the game if I was a player. And something has to change because you have lost to some poor teams now, and now you're losing to the better teams. So what's the point? What's the point in all this, I guess, is what I'm getting at.
That mentality is no different from me in fantasy football matchups where I'm trolling when I'm up by 50 and I'll be like, "Oh, there's no chance I'll win." Like, this other team's way better, like all this stuff. Like just that loser mentality. Like, and as somebody who's done that like over a lifetime now, I can say that, I can recognize that's just what he has right now. And unfortunately, it's leaking into the locker room and into what players are saying.
Yeah,
You got Reece
that's what I
James.
mean.
Right, you got Reece James out here talking about how, oh, yep, they're young. I still think we're improving. Enzo's saying last 2 months they're still clearly better. No, you're not. I don't care what you say. I don't care what evidence you show me. The last 2 months you have not been better than the first few months. Do I agree you maybe were outperforming in the beginning? Sure. But to say that is absurd. You're throwing the team under the bus when you talk about how you trust Robert Sanchez. Oh, Noni makes mistakes. Moises makes mistakes. Okay, do they, I can't even talk because I'm so pissed at the player that I'm about to bring up. Do they lead the entire European leagues in mistakes leading the goal? We're talking a couple thousand players in the entire, European top five now. So many players. Do do these other guys, Noni, Moises, do they lead all that in mistakes, leading the goal? No, Robert Sanchez does. So yet you're trusting this guy, throwing other guys under the bus. I don't know what Enzo's doing. It's insane. These comments, I used to love his honesty and the things he'd say at press conferences. To me, he's fallen off that completely in the way he talks. Yeah, I don't know if it's I'm saving myself from something, but guess what? You got all this talent in the world. You got billions of dollars being put into the squad. And I don't know, it's tough. And I do want to pivot for a second because I will say to kind of get on Enzo's side, Paul Winstanley and Lawrence Stewart, I think they've shown recently that some of the moves they've made have been atrocious. And in terms of how they're building the squad, I'm really starting to think that maybe they don't know what they were doing. And I'll always like the young player approach, but when that might be your only good approach, it's not going to build you a winning squad, at least in the short term.
That's the thing that I'm most worried about with Chelsea, I think, is that approach that I kind of mentioned last time, which seems to me from the outside, so take that as you will, but it seems to me from the outside that it's an approach of kind of throwing a bunch of things at the wall and seeing what sticks. That's a bigger problem than just a coach. That's a bigger problem than just a keeper, which Sanchez has been bad lately. And I've always been on the side of I don't think Jorgensen is that much better, but at this point I'm trying Jorgensen here and there for sure. Because of how bad Sanchez has been. But yeah, I don't know. It's just it's kind of a mess in terms of like everything top down.
And listen, Chelsea have plenty of time to turn things around. I do think the things they're doing wrong are fairly simple to fix. Mentality issues. I think that's flipping a switch. You know, some guys, maybe it's not. And if it's not for them, then get them the hell out of my squad. And I'm serious when I say that. If you don't have an elite mentality, you do not belong anywhere near Chelsea Football Club. I haven't been a fan long, but I know well enough that you need to have an elite winning Mamba mentality, if you will. So if a player doesn't have that, then get him out. If Noni is gonna just, fuck off in training or whatever when Enzo gets mad at him, then get him out the squad. Just an example there. Because I like Noni overall, but that's what you need to determine heading into summer is those types of players that have that, and then from there you need to make decisions on who's really helping your squad right now. This is such an important time. I don't think they're going to be bringing in anybody that's going to be a world beater in this window the next week here, but yeah, I just don't think you can go with Sanchez. And, you know, there's people on Twitter who say that Ben Roberts, goalkeeper coach, apparently has some power over Maresca within the club that's, basically forcing him to start Sanchez, who's, his beloved keeper back to his days at Brighton, when he was third string, might I add, before coming to Chelsea. But, you know, you just can't because you see the look on the face of players when Sanchez makes another mistake, and it's brutal. It's downright embarrassing.
Yeah, and I mean, I feel like we talk about it all the time. Something's got to change at that goalkeeping position. But you talking about the elite mentality uh, bug that needs to be implemented into this squad. I think the one bright spot in this match for me, I thought Noni and Palmer did things well at times, but I think the one bright spot for me in this match was somebody who I can't believe I'm saying this, but I think is a guy who does have that elite mentality. At least he loves Chelsea with all of his heart and soul, and that's Chalobah. I thought he might have been the best Chelsea player on the day as a whole.
Yeah, unfortunate because he did make just a brutal mistake for the third goal, and I don't really care at that point because it's over.
That's kind of
You
that's
know,
kind of where my head was at too, but yeah, yeah.
yeah, they weren't going to win, and Chalobah's never going to be elite against the Man City. Holland's going to baby him. He babies Colwill every time. Colwill, as much as I want to love him, never steps up in big matches, unfortunately. And I don't know, it's tough. I do agree on Chalobah. I think Cucurella is the same way in a different way because he's not a Cobham Academy player, but I think he will do anything for Chelsea. I don't know. I think it's interesting in the attack on a day like this because Noni technically gets a goal, but does not do enough for me. Wasn't really successful in taking on anybody on that right hand side. Palmer is trying to find himself now that teams know that he's good, and he's struggling with that a little bit for sure. Jackson is making so many good runs again, pressing so well at times, but man, is he frustrating to watch. And what sucks and what we discussed is you have to pull him because Enzo needs to send him a message that he needs to be better and finish his chances. The problem is you don't have anybody to replace him. I'd love to use Guiu because he can press and work his tail off, but he's too young and he's not good enough for the Premier League yet. And you can't replace him with Christo as they did because the match was over at that point. Christo can't press, can't really do anything that a striker can do. I'll be honest. And Nkunku does nothing for me as a number nine. Absolutely nothing. Basically, like having 10 players out there.
I think, yeah, I mean, maybe that's a little bit harsh, but I do agree with you overall in terms of if you're gonna play Christo, you have to change like, your, maybe not your formation, but you have to change your style because he's not going to lead the press in a way that Jackson does. Or Guiu might, but I also agree with you about Guiu. I mean, I'm not playing Guiu against City, so maybe I change up my formation a little bit. Maybe I think about using Palmer as like a false nine and trying to play Felix or something as well, or Nkunku. But yeah, I mean, something has to change there. Jackson, these last few matches, this one in particular, has missed too many chances for him to, in my opinion, for me to consider him the striker that you are going to have if you're going to win the Premier League. He's good enough to, get you right there, but you need somebody who's going to be so clinical and so lethal if you actually want to top the Premier League, like so consistent week in and week out.
Yeah, because the problem with Nkunku, like let's say you have the lineup of Sancho, Nkunku, Palmer, and Madueke. Palmer's the best presser out of those, and he doesn't have the ability because of his physical tools. It's because he's smart. So like those front four, like you have zero pressing, and I don't know. There's just so much going on with this team right now. So many vulnerabilities. It's going to be tough. I said in my reaction, I'm really worried about getting Europe. I'm worried our best chance, our only hope will be winning the Conference League, which somehow I'm even not that confident in that. If we win the Conference League, we're in Europa League, and that'll be, fine. But to me, I need Champions League because, I saw somebody tweet this yesterday, and unfortunately, I agree. And the tweet said, today was the first day that I was worried about Palmer leaving. And that really hit me hard, I'll be honest. And it's something I had been thinking. I texted it to you, Palmer doesn't deserve this right now. And I know he's only been here this is his second year, but they need to show that they can be a team that really does a lot of winning. And even looking ahead to next year, as I'm kind of rambling here, but it's not like you're getting more experience too, because you're going to bring in more young guys that are supposed to be your stars, your Estevos, your Kendry Paezes, your Anselminos, Mike Penders at goalkeeper. So I don't know. It's such a key point right now in this project. Um, it's such a key point. I really do think you need to finish the year strong, or there'll be another discussion about how worrisome it really is.
Yeah, if I'm Chelsea and assuming that England gets 5 spots, I need Champions League, I think, at this point, because of how well you started the season, in part, but also just because of the club that Chelsea is. If you get those 5 spots, I'm gonna need Champions League. Yes, Europa League would be a step up, sort of, because I mean they finished sixth last year, but United got that spot with the whatever was it the FA Cup or whatever they
Yeah.
won to ensure them, up into the Europa League. But um, yeah, I I think that Chelsea needs one, maybe two, but I would say probably one because I think you got Reece James, one or two more leaders, like in terms of veteran leaders, because I think guys like Palmer, are leaders in a lot of ways, but I think you need another Reece James, somebody, with who's maybe more involved in the attack to be that leader. I know you have Enzo Fernandez, who's the captain, but um, it's kind of against Chelsea's ethos of getting these young, awesome talents, but their attack is so not cohesive right now that I just think you need somebody, even if it's somebody who's not going to play much, somebody just to be in the locker room and kind of, wrangle up these young wild talents.
Yeah, we'll see what happens in terms of going forward. Yeah, Chelsea just need to flip that switch and become a team. I want them. I mean, I said this already. I want them to be reckless. I want them to be so aggressive and just have fun out there and have a strong mentality. That's all I'm asking for at this point. And I hope they can get there. I really hope they can because, and I think they can. In fact, I know they can. They've shown it. It's just about getting that extra gear. Um, and hopefully they can do that.
Yeah, I mean, they've shown it at times this year for sure. I thought in the beginning of the year that they had matured. There's like a step missing in this project in my head from where they are now to where I would like them to be, I guess. There's like something in the middle that needs to get flushed out.
And I think if they can find it, it could be so special.
I
I
agree.
think something could click. You get a consistent Reece James, you get a consistent lineup next to him, Kukurea. This is the lineup I'm rolling with for your back line. Kukurea, Colwill, for now, Chalaba, and Reece James. Then you got Enzo and Caicedo, Palmer and Jackson, and I don't care on the wings because I just think, with Reece, Palmer, Enzo, Moises, I think if you can find something that clicks, they could be so, so special because all those players have sky high potential and can be so special. So if it clicks, it'll be incredible. And if it doesn't, man, we'll just be left thinking, what if?
Okay, one quick question for you because I thought about this during the match and I didn't find a way to weave it in talking about this match, but um I thought Omar Marmoush had a great debut for Man City. I'm biased maybe a little bit because I love Marmoush, but I thought that first half he was the best player on the pitch, wasn't even close. I thought he injected something into City that they've clearly been missing. I thought the first half he looked more dangerous than Haaland. Um, Regardless of that, you know I love Marmoush. I love my Frankfurt boy, but is there a reason, do you think, that Chelsea didn't go after a guy like Marmoush? Was it just that they wouldn't want to pay that 80 million is arguably too much for him, but obviously City is ready to pay that and they need a guy like that. I would have loved Bayern to go after Marmoush, even if it means you got to change your formation a little bit or use like a two striker system with him and Kane. I don't know. Is there any thoughts you have about that? Because I think Marmoush is like a guy that could totally flip that switch for Chelsea.
Yeah, he'd be a great player to have, no doubt. Price tag, I'm guessing, is part of the reason, but this is your typical no rumors City get player. You know, you didn't see anything about this guy, and then all of a sudden City had him. So I think that's kind of the main thing. Same with the other two players they bought in this window. You know, really no rumors ahead of time, and then City just have them. So
That's how a good team
um,
operates.
yeah, you know, and that happens for Chelsea at times with certain players. You know, they usually say when there's quiet, that's when you know that something's probably going to happen. But yeah, I did think he was the most dangerous player in that first half. I thought Holland did absolutely nothing until Robert Sanchez said, "Here's a gift for you on a Saturday morning."
Yep.
And then after that, he absolutely dominated, bodied, and embarrassed the back line of Chelsea. I mean, Holland, the way he can just body people is special. So I'll give him that for the second half. He was really good. Um, Ended up being the best player probably on the day because of how well he played in the second half. But yeah, agree with your points on Marmoush for sure.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of all I wanted to bring up, I guess, and all I wanted to say. I guess the next Chelsea match will be against the Hammers on Monday, right, in the Premier League. Not tomorrow
Yeah,
Monday, but the following
yeah,
Monday.
we gotta wait a while, which sucks. Back at the bridge against West Ham right now, losing to Aston Villa 1-0. I just asked Chelsea to consider their fans. It's not just a blip anymore, and I really am getting concerned.
Yeah, that's all I gotta say. There's like breaking news right now. It's not official, but there's reports that Jonas Erbig is heading to Bayern Munich to be Manuel Neuer's understudy. A nice little, a nice young keeper from Cologne, who I think has big potential from what I hear. But so you know, a good move, I think, if that's gonna happen. Not really a lot to say on it right now. I don't really trust Peretz or Nubel with what I've seen from them, so I guess I like the move.
Yeah, definitely interesting, and I don't think it's ever a bad thing to collect young players. You know, as I even said about Chelsea, I get it. I think it's important. So good for Bayern.
Yeah, well, I guess with that, I'll send us off and we'll hope for some big wins coming up here this week and over the weekend and Monday for Chelsea. As always, Mia San Mia.
Up the Chelsea.